we need to take a look at the American religious landscape. You might recall looking at this map that you can see that while Christianity is the most widely spread version of religion on earth, if you look at the United States right here, it is not in the darkest of reds. That would be like Mexico, Greenland, some countries in South America, and some countries in Africa. So the United States has quite a lot of religious diversity, even though it is dominated by Christianity. If you look at this pie chart, notice this, that just over 25% of the population in the United States are not Christians. Then you have, nearly 75% of the population that are Christians. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. Both political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, have their data crunchers understand what we are looking at right now, which is this. They see people as voting blocks, and this allows them to be able to decide whether they're going to dump a lot of money into a particular market, whether they're going to run certain types of ads, whether they're going to pull money from a market, because they see both religious people and ethnicities as being voting blocks. So let's take a look at this. Black non-Hispanics, so that would be African Americans. 35% in the United States are evangelical Protestants, and then about 28% are non-evangelical Protestants. That means things like mainstream Protestant churches, like, for example, Presbyterians and Lutherans and Methodists, like that. Those would be kind of mainstream Protestant churches. Then you can see Catholics about 7%, and then unaffiliated about 21%. We move over to white non-Hispanics, you can see 23% are evangelical Protestants. Then non-evangelical Protestants would be about 27%, 19% Catholic, and then unaffiliated down here around 23%. Then if you go over here to Native Americans, not a large voting bloc, but nevertheless, 28% are unaffiliated. Then we've got 28% that are evangelical Protestants and 19% that are non-evangelical Protestants. Sorry, the cursor's moving around a little bit. 11% Catholics. Then over here, multiracial, you can see the split up here, but notice with multiracial, it's a fairly significant number of unaffiliated. And then Hispanic Catholics. This is definitely seen as a voting bloc by both political parties. You can see about half the population of Hispanic Catholics are Catholics. And then you can see right here, 14% evangelical Protestants, and then 10% non-evangelical Protestants, unaffiliated 19%. So the least of the unaffiliated are Hispanics. And then you can see Latinx, whatever term you want to use for that. And then you see Asian or Pacific Islander. And again, there's not necessarily a large voting number, but you can see that a significant number of these people are other world religions. That would be like Buddhism, Hinduism, and so on. And then a fairly significant amount that are unaffiliated as well. So where are the concentrations of the various religions in the United States? Do you have kind of a feel for where these things are going to be? I mean, because I have a feel for it. Here we go. White evangelical Protestants, and then white mainline Protestants. Again, mainline Protestants is going to be like Methodists and Presbyterians, Lutherans, like that. So here's white evangelical Protestants, and then this is white mainline Protestants, and you'll notice this, that white evangelical Protestants tend to be concentrated in the south of the United States, and then bits of the plain states in the upper Midwest. And then in the upper Midwest and the upper plain states, that's where we have the concentrations being the greatest of white mainline Protestants. And remember, these are voting blocs. They are seen that way by the people who crunch the numbers for the major political parties. You can see white evangelical Protestants make up 14% of the U.S. population as in 2020, and then white mainline Protestants make up about 16%. Hispanic Protestants make up about 4% of the population, but watch this. This should be pretty obvious. Where are they? In the Southwest and Florida. This is the main concentration. Hispanic Protestant population. Hispanic Catholic population found in exactly the same area. Okay, this is about 8% of the population of the entire country. Now, why is it like that? You can see, if you look at this map that we've seen before up on the top, you can see the percentage of Hispanic or Latino or Latinx, whatever you like to call it, in the states that border Mexico, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. It makes sense because of the proximity between the two countries that there would be a significant Hispanic population there. And then, of course, of Florida because of the immigration from Cuba. And then you can look down at the bottom, you can see the way these states are ranked in terms of number of Spanish-speaking population. Again, if we look where Hispanic Protestants and Hispanic Catholics are at, you can see they're concentrated in the Southwest, and then in Florida. And again, this is seen very much by the major political parties as voting blocs. So they target these groups of people in particular ways. Black Protestants, it probably shouldn't be a surprise that they are concentrated in the South. I think about 45% of African Americans in the United States live in the southern states. And it makes sense that this is where Black Protestant population would also be concentrated. White Catholics, notice this is around the Great Lakes and then in the northeastern part of the United States and then in the southern part of Louisiana. Do you know why the southern part of Louisiana and white Catholics, you can see, make up about 12% of the population? Yes, it's because of the people who were either French or Cajun. Those people were Catholics. Latter-day Saints, this is Mormons, so the LDS Church. I think everybody would probably recognize this in advance before I even told you that the area they're concentrated, of course, is Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, Arizona. Those are the main places that you find Mormons. And again, very much seen as a voting bloc, even though it only accounts for 1%. Nevertheless, if you win Idaho, you win Utah, you're winning the senators and you're winning their electoral college votes. Indigenous Christians, again, not necessarily the largest group of people, but nevertheless, other Christians make up about 7% of the population, as you can see there, and this is comprised of a variety of people, but each one of these kind of small numbers of people. Now look at this. Okay, Jewish identity. I've got that blue arrow pointing at Southern California because of the religious diversity of Southern California. Just look at other places in the country, like the center part of the United States. Not a lot of people who are going to identify as Jewish Americans. And that would imply Judaism as well. Muslim Americans, about 1% of the population. But notice, once again, in Southern California, fairly concentrated. And you can see in other parts of the country, not so much, especially out in the center parts of the United States. And if you look at Orange County, you can see it really shows up in Orange County. Then you see Buddhists. Again, California, concentration of Buddhists, not so much out here in places like, Kansas and Nebraska and North Dakota and Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia. Then again, Hindu population, concentrated in certain areas and just wide open in other places. But this is pointing out how diverse Southern California is in terms of religion. So that map I showed you in a previous video, it really does make sense when you see it like this. Then religiously unaffiliated is probably no surprise that that would be largely out in the west and the northeast, and of course in California. Now, what about the evolution of the religious landscape? So the unaffiliated are increasing in number. Does this mean atheist or agnostic? Maybe, but maybe not. It just might also mean disaffected. Take a look at this. Again, this is something that people who crunch the numbers for political parties know about. Notice how unaffiliated from 2006 until 2020, overall, the trend has been growing, even though it's gone down over the previous few years. But then notice this. White evangelical Protestants in that dark blue line. That is a declining population. White mainline Protestants. It was going down. It's had a bit of a resurgence. And then white Catholics, also a slow decline in overall population. So keep that in mind, that there is, of course, a drive by political parties to get the white evangelical Protestant vote because they vote. And the mainline Protestant vote because a lot of them vote as well. Okay, generational change in religious affiliation. So if you look down at the bottom of each one of these columns, we have 18 to 29, then 30 to 49, 50 to 64, and over 65 years old. Notice in the 18 to 29, like many of you are, 36% unaffiliated, no religious affiliation. And then you can see basically dispersed fairly evenly with all of the rest of the categories here. And then 30 to 49, 25%. And again, relatively evenly split with the rest of the demographics. And then 50 to 64, you can see it's gone down, the unaffiliated. And then 65 and older, less unaffiliated. Is this because of their own history, because of the way they grew up? Is it because they're getting older, so they want to make sure that they're close to a God of some sort, just in case something goes wrong and they die and they meet that God? So I don't know whether that's the case, but I suspect that over here, this 18 to 29, if it continues to move in this direction and stay at the same number, that will cause changes in voting patterns in the United States. Now look at this. Changes in unaffiliated association amongst young adults. So this is 1986, 1996, 2006, 2016, and then 2020. And notice how this change has happened. It has increased basically across the board. So that in 1986, people who were 18 to 29, only 10% considered themselves unaffiliated. Now it's at least at 36%. It has grown significantly. And I can see that it has gone down, and you can see that it's gone down a little bit from 2016. But nevertheless, the trend is up in terms of unaffiliated adults. So these are people and their level of education. High school and less is that dark blue, some college, then college graduate, and then postgraduate as you move over towards the right. That would be like master's degrees and PhDs. But I want you to look down at the bottom. Look at Hindus. High school or less, only about 20%. All the rest, the other 80% or so, at least some college and a significant number of people with postgraduate. I mean, have you been to a hospital before? Unitarian and Universalist, look at that. Also, very high levels of education. Jewish, very high levels of education. Orthodox Christian, very high levels of education. White Catholic, it's still very high levels. Latter-day Saints, fairly high levels, but now we're up into the 30s, right? Muslims, 40% with high school or less. And then if you continue on, you can see who is it that has the lowest education levels, all in all. Hispanic Catholics, Hispanic Protestants, Jehovah's Witnesses, Black Protestants, white evangelical Protestants, and then unaffiliated. Percentage of people who identify as, white evangelical Protestant, mainline Protestant, white mainline Protestant, white Catholic, Christian of color, other religion, unaffiliated. Okay, we've seen parts of this, but now look at political association. So Democrats and Republicans. And notice that white evangelical Protestants, the political parties are the ones that are hatched in like this. Like you see this, they're all kind of hatched in. So Democrats, only about 9% are white evangelical Protestants, whereas Republicans is 29%. White mainline Protestants, about 16% of these people are Democrats, whereas 22% are Republicans. And then you see white Catholics is about 13% and 15% is fairly even, I would say. And then Christian of color, notice, in that case, you have 32% identifying as Democrats and only 14% identifying as Republicans. Other religion, these are pretty similar. And then unaffiliated. It shouldn't probably be much of a surprise that this is larger along the sides of the Democrats than it is with the Republicans, because the Republicans, of course, do have a stronger religious base than the Democrats do.